The night was pitch black. No light, no whisper. Only a death-like, suffocating silence. Samarkand was asleep in fear and quiet, trusting the hands of its guardians. And those hands that knew the city's secrets and were meant to shape its destiny, had joined Genghis Khan. Those very hands opened the gates of the ramparts and delivered Samarkand into the jaws of the Tartar wolves. And then it happened, a festival of blood that history could never forget. No life was spared, no wealth remained safe, no honor found refuge. Samarkand was no longer a sleeping city. It had turned into a living grave. Markets drowned in blood, streets, squares, corpses at every step. Men, women, children, the elderly, fallen to the ground. The Tartar wolves seized every wall, every street, every corner. They burned, looted, seized everything, and whatever remained was trapped in the claws of humiliation. Samarkand was no longer just a name. It became a lesson, a warning, and a murderous silence that would make every onlooker tremble. This was Samarkand, a city that made one believe that if power had a physical form, this was it. Fertile lands, air fragrant with life, streets overflowing with knowledge. This city was not just brick and stone, it was the pride of Khwarezm. People used to say, if there's a reflection of paradise on earth, it is Samarkand. But no one imagined that even paradises are sometimes punished for their arrogance. Behind the city's gates, an army was breathing. More than 100,000 battle-hardened soldiers, Turks, Tajiks, Guris, men raised in the furnace of war. They were warriors whose very sight made enemies surrender before fighting. And the walls? Walls against which even time would break its head. 12 iron gates, towering bastions, fortified towers for archers. All of it screamed aloud, Samarkand cannot be broken. Khwarezm Shah believed it so deeply that he ordered even the outer gardens to be enclosed within the walls. A wall 36 miles long, 60,000 laborers working night and day. This was not mere construction, it was a declaration. The Tartars will shatter when they come here. But history always listens to arrogance in silence and replies with a storm. On the other side, Genghis Khan was advancing. He did not stop, did not bend, did not turn back. Those who bowed survived. Those who resisted became warnings etched into time. On his path, there were no cities, only lessons. Otrar, the only fortress that held death at bay for months. Bukhara fell in days, but Otrar bought time, with blood, with patience, with stubborn defiance. At last, when Otrar fell, the earth itself seemed to realize that the next name was Samarkand. On the banks of the river Sirdarya, the Tartar army gathered. Lines of captives, dust-churning horses, and a single question on silent faces. Which city will now take pride in its greatness? This was Genghis Khan's left wing, silent, disciplined, merciless. They were marching towards Samarkand, and Samarkand, it still sat trusting its walls. It did not yet know that some wars are not fought with walls, but with destiny itself.
Rabiul Awwal 617 Hijri, the day Samarkand realized for the first time that even mighty walls can hold their breath. In May 1220, dust rose on the horizon, and behind that dust were not men, but a flood. The Tatar army stood before Samarkand. Its numbers could not be counted, nor could its end be imagined. Genghis Khan deliberately placed his cavalry in the front, swift, silent, lethal. Behind them came the infantry, supply caravans, and endless columns of captives, arranged in such a way that the onlooker believed all of them were part of the same army. For every 10 captives, one Tatar standard-bearer, so that the numbers would not merely seem real, but would become terror itself. The people of Samarkand stood frozen atop the walls, watching this sight. Before them was not an army, it was a boundless sea, crashing against the walls without making a sound, terrifying them through silence. Genghis Khan's tent was pitched directly opposite the city fortress, on a mound known as Koksara, like an executioner pulling up a chair before the gallows. The Tatar force returning from the banks of the river Sir Darya also joined them, weary from plunder yet satiated with blood. With them came another column of captives. Among those captives was Yinal Khan, the governor of Otrar. He was brought before Genghis Khan on the mound of Koksara. That moment was not of revenge, it was a moment of message. Genghis Khan gave the order, and molten silver was poured into Yinal Khan's eyes and ears. The screams did not last long. Pain shattered the body, and warning sealed itself into history. This punishment was not meant for one man alone. It was a proclamation. Whoever plunders Tatar trade will beg for life itself. After this, Genghis Khan did not hurry. For a day or two, he simply observed the walls, studied the rises and falls of the city. He did not permit an assault. This silence was more terrifying than war. Columns of captives, under the shadows of swords and spears, worked day and night. Some dug trenches, some carved ramparts, some prepared for their own deaths. The nobles of Samarkand understood this was not a skirmish, this was a prolonged siege. Before their eyes, the enemy was growing. New contingents kept arriving. On the horizon, there were only heads upon heads. The danger was clear. Within days, the mountains, forests, and roads all would be sealed off, and Samarkand would be left alone. It was this fear that forced a decision. The commanders resolved to fight, but the army was not of one heart. Historians write that the hunger for battle burned mostly among the Ghori tribes. They wanted to collide. They knew how to die. The Turk officers remained silent. A deception lived in their hearts. We are Turks as well, and they are Turks too. Perhaps we will be spared. They did not know that when a storm arrives, it does not ask about lineage.
It was the third day of the siege. The walls of Samarkand were silent, and then, suddenly, the city gates opened. The Khwarezmian army marched out in disciplined order. Bala Khan and Albaz Khan, 2 names, 2 banners, 1 cry. The cry of Takbir. It felt as though even the walls answered back. The soldiers did not stop, did not hesitate. They hurled themselves straight at the enemy. The Tatars were ready. This was not a surprise attack, it was a collision. Within moments, the field turned into hell. Spears shattered, swords flashed, arrows ripped through the air. The enemy was greater in number, but that day, valor stood with the Muslims. The Tatar tide surged forward again and again, and again and again it was forced to retreat. When their storming units rushed toward the walls, such a rain of arrows fell that the earth was covered with layers of bodies. By evening, the battlefield carried the taste of defeat for the Tatars. Many were slain, many captured. The Muslims too paid in blood. Martyrdom was never cheap. The second day, when Genghis Khan entered the field. The first day was a warning for Genghis Khan. He summoned his sons, glared at his commanders, and cut into their weaknesses, not with words, but with his eyes. That night the plan was changed. The next day, Genghis Khan himself mounted his horse. Leadership stepped onto the battlefield. The attack was sudden and merciless. This time, the army of Samarkand could not even make it out of the gates. All day long, the Tatar pressure kept increasing. Every moment carried the fear that now the walls would break, now the city would fall. Those who were hopeful yesterday now had defeat floating in their eyes. Some of the city's nobles and a few military officers began whispering, "Make peace." But those who truly knew how to fight called Genghis Khan's promises nothing but self-deception. The argument intensified, voices sharpened, and the Council of Consultation turned into a quarrel. Inside Samarkand, a war was about to begin, one that would break before the walls did. When the first crack appeared, some had already decided peace at any cost. The commander of 20,000 Turk soldiers, Bashmash Khan, stood at the forefront of this conspiracy. Under the cover of night, he contacted Genghis Khan. There was only one condition: his supporting officers, nobles, and their families would be spared. In return, the gate of Samarkand would be opened. The city had been sold, but the battlefield did not yet know. The third day, when betrayal struck. The warrior commanders and the mujahideen were unaware of this secret bargain. On the fifth day, the devoted fighters of Samarkand charged out once more. They formed ranks and crashed into the enemy. By noon, the battle had reached its peak. Muslims and Tatars were locked together so fiercely that sparks flew in the air from the clash of swords. Then the Tatars played their move, a feigned retreat. The Muslims, carried by zeal, pursued them far from the city, and at that very moment, thousands of Tatars who had been lying in ambush nearby emerged from behind. Those who were fleeing turned back as well. The encirclement was complete. Help was needed, urgent, immediate. But at that very moment, the rebel officers of Samarkand, with 30,000 secured troops, abandoned the battlefield. The betrayal stood naked and clear. The exhausted fighters were left alone. Morale began to shatter. Formations collapsed. 70,000 devoted souls, 40 to 50,000 professional soldiers, and the rest volunteer fighters fell fighting, embracing martyrdom. This was the moment when Samarkand was defeated not by the sword, but by its own people. When the gates opened by themselves, the war was still raging. Yet inside the city, another battle had already been lost. A large delegation of Samarkand's elites silently made its way to Genghis Khan's tent. No wounds were shown, no mention was made of the dead. There was only one plea: grant a general amnesty to the people of the city. Genghis Khan smiled. They were received warmly, and the amnesty was accepted. They returned satisfied, believing the city had been saved. After the night prayer, with this self-deceiving certainty, the gates of the walls were opened. And then, amid chaotic cries of victory, the Tartar army poured inside the city. The very first order was not for slaughter. Genghis Khan said, "Pull down the walls." The ramparts, the bastions, all defensive arrangements were torn apart so that tomorrow no one would dare raise their head. Columns of captives and Tartar units worked day and night at this task. The walls, once called impregnable, within 1 day and 1 night were leveled to the ground. And then the promise was buried, the amnesty that never existed. The next proclamation was brief: evacuate the city. Whoever is seen inside will be killed. That was all. The life of Samarkand, its wealth, its honor, its dignity, nothing remained safe. Tartar soldiers spread through the streets with savage brutality. Men, women, children were divided into groups of hundreds and driven out of the city. The skilled, spared for slavery to the army. The strong, for carrying burdens. Beautiful women, their fate was not even fit to be written. Many people, to escape humiliation, hid in basements. Then Genghis Khan's announcement thundered, "Whoever emerges from anywhere will be killed." Fear dragged even those in hiding out into the open. Thus, the entire city was brought into the open fields. However, the city's Qazi, the Sheikh al-Islam, the members of the reconciliation delegation, and their families, around 50,000 people, were exempted from this humiliation. This, too, was a message. He who bowed in time survived. The elephants of the Khwarezmian army were now in Tartar hands. When hunger made them restless, their mahouts appeared before Genghis Khan. He looked at the animals, heavy, sluggish, and useless for his kind of warfare. With indifference, he said, "Drive them into the desert. They will find their own fodder." The order was obeyed. The elephants were abandoned in the sand. No water, no food, they writhed in agony and died in silence. There was no lament, no tears. This is the point where Samarkand ceased to be merely a city and became a lesson. The Turk soldiers of the city, hoping for their lives to be spared, went over to the Tatars. In their hearts, a deception was still alive. "We are Turks as well, and they are Turks too. They will not kill us." This was a delusion that had already been murdered before the sword ever fell. The Tatars made an offer. "Hand over your weapons, surrender your riding animals, leave behind your wealth and belongings. We will escort you to a safe place." The soldiers gave up everything, and when their hands were empty, the Tatar swords were unleashed. They were cut down like a field of ripe wheat. No one looked at who was Turk, no lineage, no language, only corpses. On the second day after the conquest, the massacre began. Samarkand, the very city that had once been a center of knowledge, now became a field of dead. Markets, streets, squares, everywhere lay the bodies of God's servants. Towers of skulls were raised so that coming generations would remember fear. This was not history, this was a threat. The Castellan, Alp Khan, still alive with a handful of soldiers, launched a sudden attack from hiding. Swift, bloody, merciless blows. Cutting his way through, he escaped the city and moved south to join Khwarezm Shah. This was Samarkand's last military breath. The next day, the Tatars breached another wall of the fortress and captured it as well. In one mosque, nearly 1,000 Muslims had taken refuge. The Tatars, after destroying other parts of the city, reached that place. The house of God was set on fire. No scream survived. There was no escape. All were burned and attained martyrdom. The earth prostrated. The sky remained silent. Bashmash Khan and other treacherous commanders like him, for a day or two they were treated with great courtesy. Their 30,000 soldiers were dressed in Tartar uniforms as if they had been turned into victors. They belonged to the Konkli and Turk tribes. They were dreaming of rewards, eager to collect the price of their betrayal. But Genghis Khan did not trust traitors. He knew one truth well. He who is not loyal to his own master belongs to no one. One night, when Bashmash Khan and his companions were deep in sleep, the order was issued. The Tartar army fell upon them. When morning came, 30,000 bodies lay unburied, without shrouds. This was the final lesson of betrayal. Samarkand did not fall by the sword. It was shattered by deception, delusion, and the treachery of its own people. Khwarezm Shah. Before the assault on Samarkand, Khwarezm Shah had already moved south. When news of the siege reached him, he sent 10,000 soldiers as relief, but the encirclement had turned to steel. No path was found. Then he dispatched an army of 20,000. They too returned. Samarkand kept waiting for help, and help lost its way. Samarkand and Bukhara were drowning in blood, and the surrounding Muslim states stood by as spectators. Muslims were slaughtered, cities burned, yet no throne considered jihad a duty. The Abbasid Caliph al-Nasir, the one most responsible for this bloodshed, remained engrossed in luxury at the cost of that blood. His vizier, upon hearing the accounts of Samarkand and Bukhara, began to tremble. He rushed to the caliph, his voice choked. "Alas, Islamic cities have been destroyed. Muslims have been slain." The caliph did not even raise his head. With indifference, he said, "Leave this matter. I have a more important concern. Where is my speckled bird? It has been 3 days. I have not seen it." That was the moment when the caliphate, in the eyes of history, died. With the Tartar invasion, border cities began to empty. People believed that Khwarezm Shah would stop them at the frontier, that the heartland would remain safe. But Bukhara fell, Samarkand collapsed, and delusions were buried. The king's lack of resolution, the defeat of the armies, and the enemy's unchecked advance, despair seeped into every heart. No one came out to fight. All began to flee. Entire towns, villages, settlements were emptied. These refugees did not know where they were going. They only knew that death was behind them. The elderly, the sick, veiled women and innocent children, no mounts, no provisions. Each day they looked to the horizon, set out with hope for some unknown refuge. Walking on, their feet gave way, animals collapsed, and far and wide no city came into view. Many died on the road from hunger and thirst. The weak were left behind, and the terror of the deserts became their shroud. Some encountered Tartars along the way, and the sword ended the rest of their story. The last refuges. Those of means had already departed toward India, the Arab lands, and Asia Minor, but the majority began to consider Herat, Merv, Nishapur, those walled cities, as places of safety. Within a few months, the number of refugees in these cities reached into millions. They did not know that these walls, too, were temporary. Samarkand. It was not just a city that fell. Here, arrogance died, delusion died, and the honor of the Ummah was buried. The Tartars committed the killing, but the path was cleared by our silence. The story does not end here. This is where the real destruction begins. In the next part, the fate of Herat, Merv, and Nishapur, the massacres that history hid behind numbers, and the question that still lives on today: when an ummah falls apart, who stops the storm?